What's up everyone, I'm 10 Steps. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this video. I'm really excited to jump into this with you guys. The other week on my Instagram, I was doing a live stream and somebody asked about my leads, how I get them to sound so big. So I wanted to do a quick video, show you guys the leads for my new single, Fly. It's out now on In Harmony Music. So if you haven't already checked it out, make sure you do. It's on Spotify and Apple Music and everywhere else. So let's jump into the project and check out these leads. So the one thing to note in this project, even though you see all these plugins here on the master channel, they're all pretty much turned off except for just some gain to bring down the volume and a limiter to make sure we don't clip. But everything else, we did the master totally separately. I sent it out for mastering, so you're not going to hear the final mastered version. But this is basically what it sounds like when I'm working on it, which is really, at the end of the day, what you want to hear. So I'm going to just play the drop for you, so that way you can kind of hear what it sounds like if you haven't already heard the song, and we will go from there. So here is the drop to Fly. So there you go. That's the drop of Fly. So let's dive in here with the leads. I'm just going to solo the leads real quick so you can hear them. So that's what the leads sound like on their own. So basically the way I like to create my leads is layering, just a shitload of layers. There's tons and tons of layers in this track. There's I think 6 layers of leads, then there's a bunch of basses, just all kinds of stuff in here that basically really all combines to make it sound really full. So I'll just cycle really quickly through each of the 6 leads as it's playing, so that way you can kind of hear what each of them do, and you'll hear how they each have kind of different properties that kind of fill out the entire lead sound. So there you go. That's all the different leads that make that up. Now, something really, really important that I see a lot of people not doing is bussing all of their effects. Now, to be fair, I didn't do this for the longest time. I didn't realize the kind of impact that it could have. And a very good friend of mine showed me kind of why it makes all the difference. And ever since then, I've never looked back. So you'll see in my projects, there's a lot of buses. This one, I don't know I think this is one of the first ones actually, when I was making this, that I started doing this. So there aren't a ton of buses going on here, but you'll see on some of my other tracks, literally I'll have like this one filled up, I'll have this one filled up. I will use tons and tons of buses. But the main 2 buses used on these leads are a reverb bus and a delay bus. So if I go ahead and turn those off, I'll play what that lead sounds like, and you'll see that it is not what you hear in the final version. significantly more dry. So each of these layers has a different release value. Some of them are shorter, some of them are longer. Basically, I'm just trying to make sure that all of the open spaces here, like in between each of these things, because it's not an arpeggio, right? It's not it's not like that. It's very, simple. If I open up the MIDI, you're going to see like there's space in between these. This is not something where every 16th note has a note being played. So you need to be able to fill these spaces, otherwise it just sounds really, really empty. I'll solo this so that you can hear it without the reverb and the delay, and then I'll turn each one of them on. So you can see it makes a ton of difference. Like, as nice as it sounds without them, because it doesn't sound that bad without them. A little bit empty, but it doesn't sound bad. And that's because I'm really careful with how I craft my leads, because the last thing I do is put on reverb and the delay. When I'm actually building these lead layers, I'm literally doing it totally dry. So when I go into, let's say, Spire, and I'm creating my lead stack, I'll immediately go and turn off the reverb and the delay. I'll just mute them right off the bat, because I don't want to hear them with the reverb and the delay within Spire, because I know I'm not going to end up using it. What I would love, though, because to be honest with you, I do actually like the way the reverb and the delay sound in Spire. The problem is I can't bus them, and I can't, compress my dry signal without also compressing my wet signal. So what I would love is if Spire would take a page out of Serum's book and create just a Spire effects plugin that I could put on a bus, like I can do with Serum. Like if I was to use the Serum reverb, I could go over to my bus, go to Xfer, and just pull up the Serum effect rack, which is fantastic, and I love it. Of course, on my computer, I have a ton of Serum presets, so Serum always takes forever to load, even just the effects one. But I could just load up the effects, and that would be totally fine. And I wish Spire would do that. Maybe one day they will. If you guys are listening, please, thank you very much. So that is kind of how I operate as far as how I mix, or how I add my reverb and my delay. And I do it all to the stacks too. I don't do it to each individual layer. You can see that there's no buses going here. The only things really on these layers at all, for the most part, is just EQ and some compression and some sidechain. And normally I actually do my sidechain on my stack, so you can see I have the LFO tool. Normally I just put it on the stack itself. I don't know why I didn't this time. I made this project, I started a year ago now, maybe a little more. So I honestly don't remember why. But normally I just put it on this stack. And then I do a lot of stuff on top of the stack also. So I'll have some compression. I'll have a little bit of just overall EQ, right, to try and take out some of those really harsh frequencies that come through. I love FabFilter Pro Q3 for this, just because they have that amazing feature where it actually tells you what some of the dominant frequencies are, and you can go in there and you can decide if there's something you want to get rid of or not. I have my imager on here, just to kind of boost. It's very, very lightly used, just to kind of boost a little bit of the upper mids, and some of the high end in the stereo field. It's very, very minimal. I just felt it needed a tiny, tiny bit of extra width. The leads themselves are pretty wide, but they're also very mono compatible. And also you can always check your leads in mono in Logic by putting a gain plugin, and then you can just flip mono on and off. And then looks like there's one more EQ, just to give a little bit of boost in the upper mids and the trebles. But that's pretty much it. That's how I make my leads. We ended up sidechaining the leads a little bit harder in the mastering process. We bounced out the stems for the project into the stem master. but everything else is done right here. And that's pretty much how I create my really wide leads. It's just careful use of reverb, careful use of delay. A lot of times, I didn't do it in this project, but a lot of times I will put a compressor under the reverb and under the delay, and I'll sidechain it to the actual leads. In this case, I didn't feel the need to. I think the leads kind of came through on their own, but it's a great way to make sure that your leads don't get overrun by reverb and delay, and that the actual sound comes through crystal clear when it's playing, and then you can actually have the reverb and the delay rise up after it to kind of fill in any open space. I just didn't feel it was necessary this time, but it is something I do quite frequently. If you have any more tutorials that you'd like to see, any more projects of mine that you'd like to see, always happy to do it. Just drop a comment below. Make sure you like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. And make sure, if you haven't yet, and even if you have, go check it out again. My new single is out now on Spotify and Apple Music and Amazon and Google Play and everywhere else. It's out on In Harmony Music, Andrew Rael's label, and there's plenty more coming this year. So make sure you follow me on Instagram at 10 Steps Official, on Twitter at 10 Steps Music, and thank you guys so much for tuning in. See you next time.